Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 6 of Undone. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up with Alma trying to get out, but once again her powers are on the fritz, so her trying to leave the time she's stuck in, it's not working until she eventually does run into Geraldine. And I thought it was so interesting because she ended up finding Geraldine because she was following some black-haired woman. I was like, at first I was like, do you think that's supposed to be like a future version of Alma who came here and now she's following like a future version of herself who time traveled back to this moment? But then another part of my brain, based on later stuff in the episode, I'm like, could it actually be her mom? Maybe it's a biological mom, maybe it's a stepmom, because, we know this has trickled down to some extent. Geraldine had it, then Jacob had it, and then Alma has it, and also Becca has it, which also makes you wonder, I guess it's not in, at the very least, if it's there, it's not that strong in Jacob, but maybe it's not that strong in his siblings either, which I don't think they didn't reference it last season, and this is the first time they brought it up. I thought Jacob was an only child. To find out he's got two other siblings, got two other brothers, is really interesting. But Alma followed that woman, and at one point she had followed her to like an elevator or something, and then the moment the doors opened, like it was just, the ground was breaking, and it was like a space-time continuum just out there, just like, okay, let me keep following this lady, and it leads to Geraldine, and Geraldine wants nothing to do with Alma because she believes like, oh, you're with her. Did she send you? Like, wait, who? It's like, we never got an answer to that. That's why I'm like, I'm assuming this has something to do with some of the trauma that Geraldine is dealing with, which I guess, in its own way, each one of them is dealing with their own stuff. I haven't even talked about it because I did forget, because I talked about, right, that Alma's got her demons, that she suffers from depression, that no matter how much fixing of her life is going to happen, there's still a lot of internal stuff she still has to deal with. Because I'd actually forgot that Alma tried to kill herself. Like, that's why her mom was so, like, and like on her in season 1, but I completely let that slip my mind. I was like, right, I knew like Alma was probably dealing with some depression and stuff like that, just the way she was the way she acted about her life and stuff. But I was like, it wasn't until just now, and I was like, right, I forgot Alma tried to kill herself. But then you have like Jacob like throwing himself into his work and just the demons that associate with that. Now Geraldine, it seems like maybe that's just kind of like a little bit of that family curse, like, you know, because it could be like, once again, the boundary between these powers and what maybe mental illness, like it might be a thing of, I keep going back to like, I always reference all the time, it's like Legion, specifically this show because I'm not well versed in the comics, but David, it's like, oh, you're this powerful mutant. It's like, yeah, but he might also have mental issues along with being this super powerful mutant. Both things can be true at the same time, I believe. And I wonder, and it might not necessarily, I don't know if, I would assume depression would still be considered, I think that's, yeah, depression is considered a mental, I don't know if illness would be the right word, but I think it would fall in that category of like, you know, mental illness, I think. I don't know if I would necessarily describe it as I think it's an illness because like, right, you can treat depression, but I don't know. So I think it might be a combination of like, yeah, and it's something that's kind of trickled down the family. I think there's something in each character's heart that they're already dealing with, and extenuating circumstances in their lives just like agitated anymore. Like I think there's certain things that kind of jumpstart what might be like something that passes down. Because I don't know if depression is something that passes down. I feel like and I'm not well versed in mental illness and stuff, so I don't know if that is. But I feel like if you have it, maybe more like, I don't know if that's one of those things that can be. I think, and once again, I'm speaking out of ignorance, maybe schizophrenia is something that can be passed down genetically. I don't know if depression is, though. But I'm going into this whole diatribe. But it was interesting, like, Geraldine's reaction. In the moment, Alma's like, oh, I'm your granddaughter. She's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to. Because at first, I'm like, oh, are you treating Alma like she's not really there? Because I'm sure for Geraldine talks about she just wants to get back to her sons. It's like, my 3 boys need me, I can't be here. So I thought she was thinking Alma was in her head, and it's like, right, if they see me talking to myself, they're just going to think I'm crazy and I'm going to stay here longer. So I think that's what it is. There's an element of that, but it's not necessarily, she knows Alma's real, maybe, because she was like, the lady was like, the orderly or whatever was like, oh, is there a problem? And it was like, no, everything's good. and Alma's still trying to fix everything. It's like, right, like I could, if I could stop, like I'm actually trying to get to 30 years in the future, and like you told my mom not to adopt Alejandro, and in that moment, Geraldine stopped and was like, what? And Alma's like, right, you don't know why you said that. That is the thing. It's 30 years later. So what would change her mind in that 30 years? Because Alma's like, yeah, you don't know why you would even say that. And I'm wondering, is it because, and this is where I was getting at, like either that black-haired woman that Alma followed was, like I said, a future version of Alma going back in time, or maybe that was Geraldine's mom, or like biological mom, or maybe adopted mom. Now, either way, I'm thinking that the adopted element plays a role in this, just because of the whole Alejandro thing. So that's why I think Geraldine was almost like, wait, why would I ever say something like that? Someone taking in their biological child, or taking in a child, why would I ever say no to that? That's why I'm leaning more towards either she had siblings that were adopted, or she herself was adopted into a family. Because let me really get into like where my thought process is. My thinking is that, let's say for example, Geraldine was adopted into a family. Maybe it's because of her circumstances. It's kind of a whole wheelhouse of things. And she's probably been dealing with this whole power and everything, and being so alone with it for so long that even her family turned against her. Maybe she had siblings and stuff like that. So maybe that's why she told Camila not to bring Alejandro. That was kind of my thought, was like, right, you don't want to bring Alejandro into this family where there's already going to be this complicated thing, because she probably knows like what I have. She's like, hopefully, she was probably hoping it never got passed down to Jacob, but she never would have guessed like, no, my grandchildren have it, like Alma and Becca as well. So she's probably like, right, just on the chance that you don't want to have a child, like, because she was saying like, oh, Alma's a miracle. And I think it's like maybe because she was saying, right, maybe at that time she didn't know, or at least didn't believe that Jacob was aware of everything, and maybe whatever it was, maybe because she thought like, oh, Jacob doesn't have these powers, so his grandchild wasn't going to have them either. Sadly, both Alma and Becca ended up having. But like I said, maybe the thought process is don't bring Alejandro into this, because you're going to screw up not only your life and his life and your children. Like, it's just going to be a complicated mess. And I figured, my thought process in the previous episode was, I think she's doing it because she believes it is the right thing to do for everyone's sake, that everyone's going to be happier in the long run, that Alejandro is going to be in a better place. So, but that's what I'm saying, like, the discrepancy between, but once again, that is a 30-year period. A lot can happen, and I think that's the point. A lot can happen to change someone's mind in a 30-year span, you know? I mean, hell, you were a very different person 5 years from now. That you're definitely going to be a very, very different person 30 years in the future. So I'm curious, what were some of those, what experiences led to all of that? So Geraldine kind of wanted nothing to do with Alma, especially because Geraldine was making this circle. I forgot what she was saying, like artistically what it meant, which Alma kept being like, oh yeah, Dad has like a whole bunch of those like in his office or whatever. But there was like one piece off on its own, and the doctor was like, oh, like what's that about? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. And Alma was like, oh, maybe whatever it is, it's whatever you're hiding from or you're afraid of. But ultimately, Alma's playing the song that her and her sister, well, they came up with the lyrics for it. And Geraldine's like, right, what's that song? Can you teach it to me? So now, this was also where I was also playing into this as well, where I believe, well, this is another part of like the Alejandro thing. I was wondering, is it because Geraldine knows the future because she gets visited by Jacob and Becca and Alma, and it's like, right, for everything to play out the way it's the time loop thing of like, you know, right, I have to make it so that Alejandro never lives with you, because it will lead you and everyone down the paths that kind of led them to where they are now. Like, it all has to come full circle. So being visited by people from the future and makes her she has to set everything in motion. I don't know. It seems like that's not quite the case, but that was another thought I had last episode as well. So, but luckily playing the piano, they were able to kind of reach out to Becca. Becca opens up the portal, and Alma was able to go through, but Geraldine wanted nothing to do with it. She even said her powers went away. Once again, I believe she wasn't really sure what was real and what wasn't. So she's thinking like, no, I need to keep my mind straight. I need to be not crazy and see all this stuff and believe it. I can't believe any of this. I have to keep my mind straight, because if I sound and seem crazy, I can never go home to my kids. And we even saw the spark of Jacob's like obsession with helping his mom, where he's like, oh, like here's this thing, Mom, it's going to help you get better, and so you'll never have to be here again. And we see like the fostering of those thoughts that would eventually lead to his work and everything he's done. Like he's basically spent his entire life trying to help his mom. Obviously, these past 17 years, he changed everything, because if he became so obsessed with work, he knows what path that would lead to. His, him killing himself in Fernaz and kind of the damage that would cause his family. So, but back present day, Alma still wants to go back, but Becca's like, no, we're here in the here and now. At the very least, we can fix things. How about rather than trying to change time, which once again has its own ripple effects. It's just like, you don't want to change time too much, because that's just going to be a whole problem. It's like Becca's suggesting, why don't we fix things here and now? Like see Mom and Dad and see what they're up to, so we can actually fix things. Which she's also avoiding Reed right now, because she doesn't know what to say. Which Alma's like, oh, you could always go back and change history, so made it so that you never met Reed. And she was saying it jokingly, but obviously she was just trying to, like, it's kind of a defense mechanism of kind of cracking a joke like that. She wasn't serious, because she herself has already done that, and she's so busy trying to fix her family, she isn't really concerned herself about that. Because it's like, right, Sam's with someone else, he's happy, but it's like, you're not happy about it. But it's just kind of like, right, I was never going to be that person he needed me to be, because I think in Alma's mind, she thinks she's too broken. And I think the rest of the family's starting to get there. Not about Alma, but each other. I think Becca's starting to think that about herself. I think Jacob is too, and even Camilla, because Jacob's like, why didn't you trust me enough? But for her, it's like, it was her pain and she didn't want to share it, because she figured like if she talked to her about that pain, it's like, you could not understand what I've been dealing with. And in that moment, he kind of relives, the truth about timeline A, where he killed himself in Fernaz, and he's just like, right, I think I can imagine like carrying around some pain like that, something that you can't do anything about, something you can't change. Luckily, he was able to change, but it doesn't erase, like, no, it might be a different timeline now, it might be timeline B, but I haven't forgotten what I did in timeline A, that set all this in motion. So, but he was saying like, right, like you could have talked to me about it, but she wanted to tell him multiple times, but I think she was saying that he was so happy to have a family that she didn't want to like ruin things. And he was like, right, I didn't really push as much as I should have, because he's like, I didn't want to push you. And even he recognizes like, maybe that was on some level I didn't really want to know. I wanted to keep everything so happy and perfect. Even now, currently, what did he do? He still never really pushed over these years, because he didn't want to burst the bubble of, right, this is a good life we're living, and I don't want it to come unraveled. And even Camilla being like, right, why don't we just tell it like it is? We haven't been in, like, this marriage was kind of over years ago. I think, obviously, even before 17 years ago, it was over, and I think it was just, there was, because I think neither one of them was really being open and honest, and he was just drowning himself in his work. And so, now it is a situation of Becca now knows the truth, because they explain everything, which Jacob was reluctant. He was like, I don't want to tell you because you would look at me differently. And she's like, tell me the truth. I need to know the truth. And he finally does explain. She's like, oh, your fears? He was like, no, that wasn't a fear. That's actually what happened. I went crazy and I killed myself and Fernaz. And that's the thing me and Alma changed. And for her, it's like, well, I didn't know you went through that. Like, for her, it's like, it's unimaginable to go think, like, now having her dad all these years, it's like, it's unimaginable to think about my life without you. And it's like, right, if we're able to change that and I'm able to have you in my life, then we can help Mom. We have to do this then. Now knowing the full extent of what they're capable of doing and what the long run could be. But for Jacob, once again, it's been the conversation of, he just wanted his family to be happy, and he's scared that this life, if they tamper with too much, this life that they built, it's good. But the sad thing is, and I think that's the thing with any life, no life is going to be 100% perfect. There's always going to be sadness and heartbreak, and I think it just comes down to how you respond to that. I think it's kind of, and I think the more and more you try, sometimes the more and more that can backfire on you. So, they ultimately go back to when the last time Camilla and Geraldine talked, and I thought it was fascinating. And, because even Alma was like, wait, Mom and Geraldine were close? It's like, yeah. Like, my brother, like, for one, Jacob talked about this previously. His dad left his mom because he couldn't handle it. And apparently his two brothers, they felt so much shame for having a mom like that, so they don't come around either. So I'm wondering where the rest of his brothers now. So, and even him, he's like, even I gave up on, like, I wasn't there for my mom. I was so busy trying to save her, I wasn't there for her. But Camilla was. Both of them filling some of that hole in their heart. Whereas Geraldine was all alone, kind of had no one. Camilla had no family. It was a very mother-daughter relationship that they had. But after this talk, Camilla and Geraldine's relationship was never the same. Camilla stopped coming to see her after that, because this is all before Alma was born, because she's still a pretty late pregnancy with Alma at this point in time. And she brings up the Alejandro thing, and Geraldine's like, no, I don't want, you shouldn't do that. She's like, I know from personal experience about wanting to start a new life. You got to forget about the past. And that's not always the best thing, because I think if you forget about the past, you have a tendency to make those same mistakes. And because Geraldine thought she was doing what was best, but even when he sat down and talked to her, Jacob's like, but things aren't okay. Like, things didn't go great. Like, things are kind of falling apart. It wasn't a good thing to keep all that buried, And he's even saying, like, I'm sorry, I wish I was, like, more here for you, Mom. And she's like, no, you did fine. Like, everything is okay. But it's like, no, there's still so much more going on. And they end up going into, like, Becca pulls them into a memory. And when they go back they find the door. And now Alma realizes, right, she thought the kid crying on the other side was Alejandro. It was actually Geraldine. Well, was it Ruko? It's basically the equivalency of Rachel. Because that was her original name before she, like, changed her name to Geraldine to kind of, I think, fit in. But it's like, right, whatever's behind this door is whatever it is that Geraldine is hiding from and keeping buried. It's also the contributing factor that led her to decide to tell Camilla that like, all those years ago told Camilla not to adopt Alejandro, that it was best for everybody just to kind of start fresh and leave the past behind. And so they get her to open the door, and that's where the episode ends. So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see where the next episode takes us. Obviously, it's episode 7, so second to last episode of the season. So I'm very curious to see what revelations we get in episode 7. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.